My name is Tennille Corbett, and I am one of 3 prevention managers with the WCB. The majority of my career has been in healthcare, and 2 years ago I made the transition to work with the WCB, and I am currently situated out of the Saskatoon office. Our objective coming out of today's session is to provide you with some tools and resources in order to help your organization move forward on a journey towards workplace health and safety. Make zero your mission at home, at work, and at play. So what is Mission Zero? I believe you've already heard about that today at lunch with Phil Germain speaking on Mission Zero. It was launched in May 2008 after the creation of the WorkSafe partnership in 2002. It is an initiative of the WorkSafe Saskatchewan, the partnership between Workers' Compensation Board and the Ministry of Labour Relations and Workplace Safety. But what does Mission Zero mean? Mission Zero means working towards 0 injuries, 0 fatalities, and 0 suffering. It means believing all injuries are predictable and preventable. It means that the only right number of injuries and fatalities is 0. It means being a champion to make our community a safer place to live, work, and play. It means as employees and citizens, we are going to work together to make Saskatchewan the safest place to live. This year is the 11th anniversary of Mission Zero. When we launched Mission Zero, the total injury rate was over 10%. Imagine 10 people in every 100 getting hurt every year. That means at this conference, if we convened again next year, we could count on almost 50 of us being hurt between now and when we meet again. Some of those injuries could be severe, long duration, long-lasting, permanent injuries, and that's disturbing. We are happy to say that that number has now dropped by almost 50% in 2018, but the trend is starting to climb once again. We've made huge progress in the province. However, we can never take our focus away from safety, and the challenge for the Prevention Department is to keep up with emerging issues in health and safety, as well as to remain focused on employers and industries that need our attention the most. No matter how small or large your business or company is, you have to remember that managing safety is very important. We also know that safety is learned. No one enters the workforce knowing everything they need to work and support each other to go home safely every day. That's why you have such an important role to ensure safety is embedded into the core of your business. We have many people here and resources to help you. But first, we need to recognize that employers are on a spectrum. Employers just beginning their journey may be focused on claims costs and return to work, so regular meeting between the employer and our operations team may be necessary. Our account managers are the right people to help you understand what your first or next steps could look like. Other employers may be focused on injury prevention. They may work closely with the prevention consultants on education, training, assessments, and surveys. Other, more sophisticated employers may be in a maintenance stage where meetings with the account manager are less frequent and for the purpose of maintaining a relationship and sharing their successes with other employers within their industries. Our team at the WCB is here to help you with time, expertise, and resources to help you identify where you are in your safety journey. We can also provide a large library of resources to help you educate and train your staff. You may have seen or heard different ads that promote the WorkSafe message. We have many forms of mediums to get that message across, such as television, radio, social media, event attendance, and partnerships. While we are here to offer support to all employers and workers of Saskatchewan, we do set priorities, and once we set those priorities, our role is to assist those organizations, industries, and demographics that we have identified as contributing to the larger injury rate in the province. WorkSafe has identified several areas of focus. We have identified and we will focus on specific injuries such as healthcare and transportation, and we have identified the youth demographic as a high-risk one, and we will work with employers that have a certain number of claims that are above the total average injury rate for their industry. Again, our data only tells part of the story. We don't know the whole story until we start working with employers to find out where they are on their safety journey. There are 6 account managers in the department, and they are all here today. Each is assigned specific rate codes as well as one specifically responsible for youth. Their role is to work closely with employers and to help the employers with any WCB questions they may have. They also facilitate meetings between the employer and other WCB representatives and work closely with each employer to see what resources are best suited for what they need. Account managers can also do a variety of presentations, such as how experience rating is calculated, return to work presentations, general understanding of the WCB, and general health and safety information sessions. Account managers also take care of booking and delivering cultural survey results for the employers. They will facilitate discussions around the next steps once an assessment takes place, and will help employers work through the development of an action plan to fill the gaps as identified in those assessments. They are truly the liaison between the employer and the WCB. If they can't answer your question, they know who at the WCB can. Our prevention consultants work in conjunction with the account managers, employers, and workers to provide education and training. We travel all over Saskatchewan to bring education sessions such as supervision and safety and occupational health committee training to you and your staff. Last year alone, we held 201 sessions that reached over 4,200 participants. They also performed the Foundational Pillars Safety Management System assessments. The assessment is designed to measure the strengths and opportunities for improvement in 6 key areas of health and safety. We have one training and event coordinator whose main task includes event preparation, coordination of all the venues for those education sessions, material handling, and shipping. So basically making us look good when we're on the road. This is also the person that could work with you to plan and coordinate customized sessions that are outside of our public training calendar. We can come to your workplace and hold a session just for you. We also have on staff an individual responsible for partnerships and sponsorships. Partnerships are very valuable to us as we want to have partners at the table who we can use to leverage the safety message, but also to help build safety capacity within the province. Our biggest partners include our 7 funded safety associations who take care of the members in the rate codes that they cover. In total, 18 of the 50 rate codes are covered under a safety association, and we could not reach our goals in the province without these organizations. They provide industry-specific training for their members, as well as conduct gap analysis and assessments on safety management systems. We have some of our core team here with us today to showcase the work that we have done and how you can be a part of it. For the next hour, we invite you to learn about safety management systems, psychological health and safety in the workplace, and our involvement in the WorkSafe Saskatchewan serious injury and fatality strategy. As we move through the sessions, you'll see the connectivity in how all of the tools and working together can help you create a safety program, measure where you are on your journey, and essentially make a commitment to improving your safety management system and safety culture. If you have specific questions that you would like to ask but prefer to ask one-to-one, we will have an account manager and prevention consultants at the back tables to answer them. Just a few thoughts before we go to the next presentation. Safety is a journey, one that is never ending. And we know that it is a continuous process improvement journey, and we know that we should never stop trying to improve and get better at doing it every day. The conversations with employers in regards to safety have become an easier conversation around the table as everyone in the province becomes more attuned to what health and safety really means. Last but not least, take advantage of this session, ask lots of questions, and if you run out of time, please don't be shy to visit the WorkSafe booth to continue the conversation just outside these doors. So next I'd like to welcome Loren Mitchell to the stage for our next presentation. Loren is one of our prevention consultants and will be speaking to you about the importance of safety management systems and assessments.
Hello, thank you for joining us. Spend a few minutes here talking about prevention basics. First of all, can you hear me okay? I come from an athletic background and I'm used to shouting out things, so a microphone's a little different. We got some questions early on about What is a safety management system? Secondly, why do you need one? And thirdly, what is an assessment? So let's just go through those three questions. Why does any organization want a safety management system? There are many reasons. We chose just to talk about three. There's a strong business case. There are carrots, sticks, and sermons. And there's a court of public opinion. First of all, the business case. These days, it is fairly common knowledge that safety doesn't cost, it pays. So if you calculate and crunch all the numbers, the investments that go into developing a safety management system, the education, the training, the administration, it's a no-brainer. For every dollar invested, you get about a $4 return, depending what study you read. Some returns are as high as $6 return for every dollar invested. Secondly, financially and statistically, we know that the fewer injuries you have, the better profit margin your organization will maintain. And thirdly, in reality, in many, many sectors, it's a pre-qualification to do business in many, many places now. The second reason, carrots, sticks, and sermons, we were fortunate to listen to Dr. Linda Robson last fall. She did a great job explaining her randomized control studies. And she found combinations of these three themes. The first idea is that people develop safety management systems for the reward. Some of those rewards are tangible, some of them are less tangible, but there's a reward inherent in having a safety management system that's functioning and alive. Secondly, some organizations are pressured into compliance by some form of authority. Very quickly, a lot of us will default to legislative authority, and certainly that's an important one. But there are other forms of authority. If I'm producing widgets and I'm choosing to meet the ISO standard, then that's a pressure that I will make sure I follow. And the third one is simply moral and ethical reasons. People develop a safety management system to better meet that mission zero that Tennille was talking about. And the third reason is becoming more interesting all the time, the court of public opinion. And certainly it is evolving. So 38 years ago, Canada finished the final leg of the CP rail through British Columbia. It was a 4-year project. Any guesses on how many fatalities that project had? Just shout them out. 3,000. 3,000? Other guesses? I'll spare you the agony. We estimate 1,000 fatalities. But of course, that was how many years ago, and the records are not very attainable. Certainly that project might have been more well known for its treatment of the Chinese laborers that did a lot of the heavy work. So then you jump 50 years along, and we're down building the Hoover Dam. 1935, another 4-year project. Any guesses there? How many fatalities? Sorry? 200. Another guess? 500. Actually, it was a little better, if you can say a fatality is better. 96. Interesting, though, there was actually upwards of 125 that were unaccounted for because people became injured, left the job, and later died as a result. Now we get more to the modern era when we built the Confederation Bridge. And this is in our working lifetime, right? This was just like 20-some years ago. Any guesses how many fatalities Canada, this Canadian project, sustained? 6? Any other guesses? 25? They had 3 fatalities. However, I find the shocking part that the project had budgeted to have 13 fatalities. Can you imagine going into business today, saying you're going to run a project, and it's okay to have 13 fatalities? Anyway, the court of public opinion has evolved, thank goodness. So what is a safety management system? Here's a generic definition. It's part of a business, and it's developed and implemented by the employer with the intent of minimizing loss through illness, injury. At WorkSafe, we have a more specific one, and it's a systematic approach to managing occupational health and safety, including all of the necessary organizational structures, accountabilities, directive documents, and supporting records. Whatever safety management system you have, there are some basic principles. First of all, it's developed and implemented by the employer. And it's implemented to minimize loss. It's current practice to consider 3 kinds of loss: human loss, property loss, and environment loss. The safety management system addresses the policies, risk assessment, safe work practices, procedures, responsibilities, and so on. And lastly, it'll vary in scope and complexity relative to its business operations. And we do see that all the time. We see perhaps a smaller company that has one location in a very narrow scope of business, and other larger organizations with multiple locations and multiple rate codes. 2 main ideas here. It's made up of directive documents. And directive documents, this is a quote straight from WorkSafe. It's an employer's policies, procedures, standards that structure all of the occupational health and safety activities. The other part of the picture are records. And so records provide the evidence that you're actually following the policies and procedures that you put in place. Okay. The big thing that a lot of organizations are working on these days is making sure it's organized into a document control system. So a document control system is a system used to track and store and archive and manage all of the digital and hard copy things that you've developed over the time your safety program has been evolving. Anybody here have more than one version of something? You've got one from last year, you've got one from 5 years ago, and so a document control system helps you organize that. And it's for both your directive documents and your records. Here's just a small example. And again, WMIS is sort of just newly on our heels, the new WMIS 2015. And so the example is company ABC has created a policy that says every worker must have generic and site-specific training. And lo and behold, we go through their system and we find a record here that has some form of numerical and nomenclature, and it shows that John Doe, first of all, did the generic training and the date with his signature, and secondly, he did the on-site. So very important that your safety management system has both those directive documents and the records. Now, what is assessment? Often it's used interchangeably with the word safety audit. And again, here's a generic definition for you. It's a systematic process to verify whether an employer has met standardized health and safety criteria. Verification techniques include 3 things: documentation review, worksite observations, employee interviews. At WorkSafe, we have a more specific definition, and there it is for you there. And as Tennille mentioned, we do 6 elements: management and leadership, hazard ID, risk assessment and controls, training and communication, inspections, investigations, and emergency response. So when you have an assessment, we'll be looking at those 6 areas. Now, your safety management system might be divided up into 10 elements or 14 elements or whatever, but we come in with our audit tool and we look through it according to these elements. Okay, a few principles to keep in mind. First of all of the questions in an assessment are scored. Secondly, scoring varies from question to question. We use all or none. We use percentage. We use part, whole, or assessor judgment. Remember, we use those 3 verification techniques. We do document review, worksite observation, employee interviews. And the final score is calculated only after the on-site activities. After that, the report does include those comments, opportunities for improvement, after which the employer is responsible for developing a corrective action plan. From our experience doing safety management system assessments, we developed a list of 12 tips to help organizations prepare. 4 phases: get set up, make sure you're preparing for the detail, be ready for the on-site activities, and fourthly, understand your post-assessment responsibilities. Let's take a look at the 3 steps for getting set up. So first of all, are you ready to have an SMSA? Directive documents must be implemented for at least 12 months prior to the assessment. So April 1st is just around the corner. Let's pretend that you and I have agreed to an assessment for April 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 2019. That would mean that all of your directive documents would have to be alive, implemented, and working from April 1st, 2nd, 3rd of 2018. Additionally, you would have to have records with the same lifespan. Secondly, do you understand the scope of the assessment? Certainly, if you're a smaller organization, you might have one location and one product or service. Remember, the objective is to give the process confirmation form a very narrow list, but remember, many rate codes are in one business. That happens often, and your account manager can explain that. You have to understand how many locations, and you have to understand how many distinct operations. Just to give you a small example, perhaps I operate the ABC Retail Company, and I have a location in Meadow Lake, Prince Albert, North Battleford. And I supply this retail business with a warehouse out of Saskatoon, and I also have a fleet of 12 trucks and 8 permanent operators. So that is a total of 4 locations and probably at least 3 different operational activities, which would probably mean that you have different rate codes, which probably means that you would have to have more than one assessment. One assessment would not be able to cover all of those activities and all of those locations. Third thing in setting up, does your organization know why you're having an assessment? This is our objective. The purpose for conducting the foundational pillars safety management assessment is to provide an employer with an objective evaluation of your safety management system. Okay? We do not look at legislative compliance. We do not evaluate industry-specific standards. What we do is evaluate how your organization is following your safety management system. So if you think you're set up, then let's get into some detail of getting prepared. First thing you want to do is establish a primary contact person. And this will be the quarterback that will coordinate and facilitate everything from the beginning to the end. This individual is the primary contact with all the WCB personnel. One of the big things they have to do is complete and return a risk and hazard assessment form early on. Auditors will be on your site. We want to make sure that we're following all your safe work practices and your PPE. Remember that this primary contact person has to know and or have appropriate access to the directive documents and records. This quarterback doesn't do all the work, but they coordinate the efforts inside your organization. Fifth, have you studied the assessment tool? The assessment tool explains what is expected within each of the 6 elements. It explains how the scoring applies to each of the questions and how they're combined to create scores. It explains what happens under document review, worksite observation, employee interviews. And it is really helpful to familiarize your organization with the verbiage that is used within our tool. Remember, our assessment tool is a product of the Joint Industry Committee guideline, and that was developed to be a non-industry specific, and so the verbiage may or may not be familiar to your organization, and that studying the tool is a good way to become familiar with the jargon. Number 6, have you completed the employee breakdown form? So this is a summary of all the employees at that location, all the way from part-time, full-time, frontline to the upper management at that location. Complete this with your lead assessor. Your lead assessor really was a big help in this situation to be as least disruptive as possible, because these interviews go on while your business is still operating. And you'll have some real smooth sailing on day 2 if you can get this kind of ironed out early. And again, a reminder that your employees might want or appreciate a little bit of help with some of the verbiage that is used. Every industry has their own verbiage, as do we. Okay, number 7, have you completed the documents required checklist? Anybody remember grade 12 or university and that final quiz? This is the equivalent of the final quiz that'll help you prepare for the final exam. Okay, the lead assessor can facilitate all of this and return it to the lead assessor well in advance of the audit, 2 or 3 weeks. It depends. Your lead assessor will let you know that. The next step is the equivalent of the wedding rehearsal, the dress rehearsal for the wedding. What will happen is your account manager and your lead assessor will meet with you on your location, and you'll finalize all of the on-site logistics. You'll review all of the activities, all of the meeting rooms that are required, access to documents, and so on. It really is the equivalent to the dress rehearsal before the wedding. So there, you've got all the details prepared. Now we're ready for on-site. Day 1 will consist of the opening meeting, and you can invite whoever you like to this opening meeting. Typically, we encourage you to include your committee co-chairs and different levels of management. We'll also have an orientation tour that first day, and we'll begin reviewing all the documents and records. Day 2, we continue with the directive document and record reviews, and we do employee interviews. And again, this can happen in the morning or the afternoon, but each assessment is individual depending on how your business is scheduled. And just remember, assessors are also starting to prepare and conduct worksite observations, which happen on day 3. So we continue the review documents, we do the worksite observations, and once we think we have all of the data that we can gather, we'll go ahead with a closing meeting. And again, invite those same people, the primary contact, your co-chairs, and any management. I often chuckle it. I do compare. I've had a few weddings in my family, and you will have 3 people in your house for 3 days. And so we try to minimize the disruption for you, but certainly you can understand that we want to be there when things are happening so we can actually see what's going on. So just be aware of that. It can be disruptive. Anyway, post-assessment activities. You will receive your final report. We are targeting for delivery 4 weeks after day 3. So let's pretend you and I are doing that April 1st, 2nd, 3rd. So 4 weeks after April 4th, you're going to get your assessment report. I think that's May 2nd or something like that. Review it. Take a look at what the things you're doing well and the places perhaps that you thought you were going to score really well, but you didn't score as well, and vice versa. And compile all the questions you have, because you're going to meet in a post-assessment meeting. And the post-assessment meeting, your WCB account manager will contact you within 2 weeks. So now you're looking at about mid-May for this fictitious assessment. And it will include, again, the account manager, lead assessor, and your primary contact. And the purpose is to review the assessment report. Make sure you bring all of your questions there. We want to make sure we have a full understanding on both sides of the table about the scores and how they were obtained. The 12th step is totally back in the employer's court. You develop a corrective action plan. Now, we have a template that we give you if you don't have a template for a corrective action plan. However, you can develop any one that you like. The corrective action plan is due 6 weeks after the assessment of the report. So with our fictitious assessment, April 1st, May 2nd, that would put you probably mid to late June. And so there you have 12 steps, and it's taken you over about 3 months of calendar. Okay. Upon request, if your organization wants some help developing a corrective action plan, your WCB account manager can facilitate that. So in summary, 12 tips to repair. Just get set up. Are you ready with those 12-month-old documents and records? Do you know the scope? And does your organization understand why? In terms of details, make sure you've designated a primary contact person and you've studied the tool. You've got the employee breakdown form organized into an interview schedule. You've combed through the documents required checklist. And there's your rehearsal, pre-assessment meeting. That happens anywhere from a month ahead of time. And then we're on site for 3 days. After that, you'll receive your assessment report. After that, we'll meet and discuss any questions that you have, and you'll wrap it up by submitting a corrective action plan. And there's a checklist of this at the back if any of this is helpful to you. So any organization here, if you want to learn more about an assessment, there are other organizations that offer assessments. Saskatchewan has 6 safety associates. I think it's 7 actually. I think I counted wrong. And they offer assessments to their members. Your WCB account manager can help you with that. And if you're a member, your WCB account manager can help you decide whether the assessment we offer is a fit for you or perhaps one of the safety associations can offer that. Okay, that concludes this part. And the next speaker is going to be Jennifer Ruskowski, and she'll speak to you about psychological health and safety.
So today I will be talking about psychological health and safety resources that WorkSafe Saskatchewan has available for you. So overview, I'm going to talk about why we're talking about psychological health and safety and why we have provided resources for you and what some of those resources are. So why are we talking about it? So here are some WCB stats that moved us further to look into mental health claims. These are the latest stats and will be available in April in our annual report. So you're getting a sneak peek of these stats. As you can see, accepted primary mental health claims have more than doubled since 2016. Does anyone know how much the economic burden of mental illness in Canada is estimated to be, which includes healthcare, lost productivity, and reduction in health-related quality of life? So any guesses how much we think the economic burden is? Sorry, how much was that? 150 billion? Okay. 5 billion? Sorry? 1.5 billion? Lots of fives in there. There is actually a 5 in there, so you guys are somewhat close. It is actually 51 billion. So it is in the billions, and it is 51 billion according to the Mental Health Commission of Canada. Just as an FYI, the graphic on the screen is a screenshot from one of the mental health e-courses, which I will talk about in a bit. So why else are we talking about it? So studies have shown that 57% of those surveyed believe the stigma associated with mental illness has improved compared to 5 years ago, and 70% believe attitudes about mental health issues have changed for the better compared to 5 years ago. So show of hands, how many people know someone who has had or has a mental health issue? So show of hands. Yeah, so as we can see just how prevalent it is. And it's great that people are willing to talk about it, But stigma still remains a significant challenge. Studies have shown that 39% of individuals surveyed would not tell their current employer about a mental illness. And another study found that just 50% of Canadians would tell friends or coworkers they have a family member with a mental illness, compared to 72% who would discuss a diagnosis of cancer and 68% who would talk about a family member having diabetes. And I'll talk about resources in a bit that can help you to have those conversations. So why else are we talking about it? So can everyone who received a colored card, so a colored index card, so if everyone who received a colored card could please stand up. Okay, people are wondering, what are these cards for? Now you know, mystery is solved, almost. So does anyone know who they represent? Close? 1 in 5, exactly. They represent the 1 in 5 Canadians who will have a mental illness in Canada in any given year. I want to actually get everyone to stand up for a bit. You've been sitting down for a while. I know you've been sitting down a lot during conferences. Probably are suffering from PMS, post-meal syndrome. Plus, there's additional food before you even came in here. So it's good to get moving, to get active throughout the day. When we talk about mental illness, yes, it does have an economic impact, and certainly there can be legal consequences, but really it's about the people. Does a mental illness just affect that person? No, I'm seeing head shake. Of course not, it doesn't. It affects their family, their friends, their coworkers. Really, it can affect anyone who is around them. And so that's why it's really important that we talk about it and that we use some of the resources that we have available. So feel free to sit down. If you do need to stand up and move around, feel free to do that as well. I know not everyone's used to sitting down all the time. So now, some good news. WorkSafe Saskatchewan has 5 mental health e-courses that are available for anyone. They are developed by the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety, or CCOHS. So the first course is an awareness course. It provides an introduction to the complex issue of mental health in the workplace and explains why it is so important. You will learn the difference between mental well-being and mental illness, factors that put people at risk, and the roles of early intervention and promotion of mental well-being at work. This course takes about 30 minutes to complete. The rest of the courses take about an hour to complete, depending on how many resources you look at. There's also a health and wellness strategies course, which will empower you to improve your mental well-being by building a strong resilience to stress, a process referred to as mental fitness. Just like there are activities that you can do to improve your physical fitness, there are also actions that you can take to improve your mental fitness. Through learning how to leverage the power of the body's response to stress, and by practicing specific lifestyle habits, you can elevate your health and performance while effectively managing high levels of stress. Now that I think about it, I'm actually kind of glad I took this course before doing this, because, not gonna lie, a little bit stressed up here. So it's a good course, I can tell you, speaking from experience. Also, the Signs, Symptoms, and Solutions course explores the signs, symptoms, and solutions for mental illnesses that are commonly experienced in the workplace. The Psychologically Healthy Workplaces course examines best practices in developing a psychologically healthy workplace. And the Communication Strategies course provides communication strategies for both employees and employers, managers, and supervisors to have that conversation about mental health issues with the overall goal to help educate and increase awareness in the workplace. So I showed you a screenshot from the awareness course just to give you a sneak peek at some of the other courses. Here's a screenshot from the Wellness and Strategies course. It lists 4 key steps in improving your mental fitness and provides additional information that anyone can use, including on lifestyle habits. In this day and age, when so many people can feel that there's so many things beyond our control, this course gives you information that anyone can use to take actions on things that you do have control over. Here's a screenshot from the Psychologically Healthy Workplaces course. Lists the benefits of promoting mental health for employers, including the cost and legal, and further expands on these. This course also discusses the promotion of mental well-being at work and includes a 7-step approach to implementing a successful program. Throughout the courses, there are words in green. In this case, it's resilience. You might not be able to see it on the screen, but it is easily able to see it in the course that you can click on, and that will have more information or additional resources for you. And here's a screenshot from the Communication Strategies course that provides real-life strategies for employers, supervisors, and workers for talking about mental health, which can help change the culture and help individuals with mental health struggles. As I mentioned at the beginning, some of the stats on stigma, and certainly it can be challenging to have those conversations. This course is good because it provides information that anyone can use to start having those conversations, whether it's in your personal life or at work. WorkSafe Saskatchewan also has some additional e-courses that may also be applicable. There's several courses on violence. There's an awareness course, how to establish a prevention program, recognizing the risk and taking action, violence in the workplace, as well as bullying in the workplace. All of the courses I just mentioned are free for Saskatchewan employers and workers. You can access them through the WorkSafe website. While they're developed by CCOHS, you want to make sure to access through the WorkSafe website to get them for free. WorkSafe Saskatchewan is also very proud to have a partnership with the University of Fredericton to provide several courses at a fraction of the standard fee. The Enhancing Workplace Resiliency course is where participants learn effective coping mechanisms and strategies that lead to more productive, healthier, and well-balanced lives, both at work and at home. The target audience for this course is everyone, and the cost is $30. Targeted to managers, the Certificate in Managing Psychological Health Issues at Work includes key principles for managers and enhancing managers' emotional intelligence, and the cost is $155. And the Advanced Certificate in Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace is designed for organizational leaders implementing workplace health and safety management systems for all employees. This course provides a solid knowledge base about how to plan, implement, and evaluate psychological health and safety programs in the context of the national standard. And the cost is $257.50. And you can register for these courses through the WorkSafe Saskatchewan website as well. WorkSafe Saskatchewan also has several print resources available for you. So we have a couple of cards that are available on healthy habits, on the 13 psychological health and workplace factors, also on mental health in the workplace. They are available on the back tables there. We do also have these resources and some posters that are also available on the WorkSafe Saskatchewan website for a free download. There are some additional websites that you can refer to for additional resources. The Guarding Minds at Work website actually has a workplace guide to psychological health and safety. Some other good websites are the Center for Applied Research in Mental Health and Addiction, and the Workplace Strategies for Mental Health Great West Life website. Another good resource is the CSA Standard Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace. This standard is actually available for free for anyone, so anyone can access it. It is voluntary, and it does include 13 psychological factors in the workplace to consider. I also want to mention Threads of Life, a Canadian charity that helps families affected by a workplace tragedy, so either a fatality, an occupational illness, or a serious injury. Through family guides, peer support, and family forums, Threads of Life shares coping tips for those families to learn how to cope with their new life. Through their website, social media, newsletters, and a speakers bureau, Threads of Life also shares the stories of how people have been impacted by a workplace tragedy, and they also have tips that anyone can use as well for coping with tragedy in your life. WorkSafe Saskatchewan will also have a psychological health and safety in the workplace event. Last year's event had over 325 attendees and featured mental health experts, both from academia and industry. Presentation slides are available on the WorkSafe Saskatchewan website if you want to look at that resource. This year, we are going to have our event on Tuesday, December 3rd, so you can put that in your calendars to save the date for that event. Registration will be through the WorkSafe Saskatchewan website starting in the fall. So, next steps. As with all of safety, talk is good, but it's not enough. We must do. So I want you to take a couple minutes to think about what is going to be your next step for psychological health and safety. Is it going to be take a course or the courses, to review the print resources that are available, to use the additional resources? So set a goal for what you're going to do for psychological health and safety, both for either personally or for work. Of course, a goal, if it's not written down, isn't necessarily, may not remember it, so take a moment, think of a goal, write it down. Lots of people have phones these days, they have a reminder. If you have a calendar, you can put it in there as a to-do. If you have the index card, you can put it on there. So think, what are you going to do? What is your next step that you're going to take to continue the conversation for psychological health and safety? So I'll give you a minute to think about what's your next step going to be. Set a target date as well when you're going to work towards. I figure if I wait long enough, you're going to be like, hey, I got to do something. I'll start writing. So next, I'd like to introduce Beth Antoshku. She's an account manager with the Prevention Department, whose portfolio includes rate codes C33 wholesale chain stores, C41 co-ops, G11 post-secondary education, G12 elementary and secondary education, and T transportation and warehousing. And Beth will be talking about serious injuries and fatalities and the definition and analysis.
So I'm going to take you through our definition of serious injuries and go through some of the analysis that we went through. So analysis was done in 2018 by WorkSafe Saskatchewan, which revealed questions about the relevance for a definition for serious injuries. As the graphs depict, total injury rate was decreasing throughout the years. But we kind of had this stagnant number of fatalities staying at 30, and then of course with last year shooting up to 48. So we needed to do something. So what was the process that they took? So Saskatchewan WCB completed an environmental scan through the Association of Workers' Compensation Boards of Canada. So we took a look at other provinces, their workers' compensation boards, and saw what they had for a serious injury definition. We were running and rerunning data to determine the effects of various inclusions and exclusions. We reviewed the final data set, and then we had initial consultation with various stakeholders to see what they thought of our definition. So what was our definition? So I'm just going to read this straight out for you guys. For the purpose of our analysis, an injury is defined as a serious injury if it meets the following criteria. So A, if a claim is a fatality. B, if a claim has more than 50 days of compensation paid. C, if a claim has an LRWS OHS referral flag. I'll break this down in the next slide for you. D, if the claim is a primary mental health claim. And E, if the claim has a permanent functional impairment greater to or equal than 10%. So if any one of the above criteria is satisfied, a claim is then called a serious injury claim within the scope of this strategy. So like I said, C, if a claim has an LRWS OHS referral flag, this means that the injuries have to be reported to the ministry. So these are injuries such as head injuries, amputation, electrical burns, exposure to radiation, or severe infections such as HIV, and the other ones pictured in the slide. Now that we have a definition for serious injury, some analysis was done. We based our analysis on these three key items. Employer, so which rate code? Part of body, where were we seeing the most serious injuries happen? And causal factors. So of course, let's take a look at the results. When applying the serious injury definition to historical claims data, we find the total number of serious injuries claims depicted in the graph pictured in the slide. So we want to make sure that it's important to note that this is a snapshot in time when the data was collected. Serious injury data is continually changing due to the definition. So of course, if we're collecting data as today's date, if a claim is going over 50 compensation days, we're not going to see that until we collect the data in the next month. So this is a snapshot in time. So we want to make sure that that's in the back of our mind as well, that these claims are developing and there may be more when we do another data set. So serious injuries based by rate code. We found that these were the top 5 industries. So in order, number 1, healthcare, manufacturing, construction, first responders, and then transportation. These were where we were seeing the highest number of serious injuries. Part of body. They mostly related to the back, so that was our highest depicted area. Number 2 was leg, and number 3 was shoulder. And then causal factor. Number 1 was bodily reaction and exertion, which took a lot of the pie. So this includes bending, climbing, crawling, reaching, twisting, your slips, your trips, your loss of balance, overexertion and lifting or pulling, and even repetitive motion. And number 2 was falls. So falling against objects, falling downstairs, falling from heights, or jumping to a lower level. So this is where we saw the most serious injuries happen. So now I'd like to introduce Jack Hardy. He's the manager of prevention with over 30 years in health and safety in various roles and industries. Jack will be addressing the strategy and some of the operational aspects of some work that's already underway and some insight perhaps into how we're planning to address the issues raised through the analysis provided. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Well, thank you very much. I've had opportunity over the years to speak at quite a few events of this type, and one of the things I've really grown to appreciate is our innate ability to take literally months, if not years worth of work sometimes, and compress it into 45 minutes, making it such that it almost sounds easy to do. And of course, we all know, having been in the business that we're in, that it is really not that easy to do. We're going to spend a few minutes. As Beth alluded to, we went through our data. We started looking at the data last year, late 2017, early 2018, and continued to, again, based on the input that was coming in, tweak the definition, rerun the data, take a look at the impact of the changes we were making. We finally landed on a number and a definition that we thought serviced us fairly well. I wouldn't say it's finished. Like most things, I think it's a work in progress, and we'll touch on a couple of things that we would like to do with this definition yet when we're actually able to get that done. What I would like to do in the minutes that we have here, though, is spend a little bit of time with you and try to explain to you some of what we're working on now and what we will be working on moving forward based on the redefinition or the reclassification, so to speak, of that serious injury definition. So let's just take a quick look. Now, again, short, we took a look at it. The data gave us industries. Industries gave us positions. Positions gave us causal factors. So we're going to try to mine down through some of that. And we're going to do it fairly quickly. I'll be around over the next couple of days. And again, if anybody has questions, we can have a coffee. We can arrange time here or at another point down the road to try and fill this in for you. But this is the next steps. Now, what I will also tell you is that in developing this strategy, we're trying to take, let's just say, a little bit of a different view operationally. Typically, what you'd see when strategies get created is we get very definitive and almost entrenched about what we want to do in a 1-year, a 2-year, a 3-year timeline. our approach to this, and Beth alluded to it as well, is the environment changes, the data changes. We're trying to create, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, a living strategy in the belief that over the life cycle of this, if the indicators we're watching changes, we believe we want to be responding to that change fairly quick and not kind of have it in our head that we have this necessarily figured out at every step along the way. So healthcare popped up on the radar screen. Let's take a look. When we take a look at it, we want to reduce injuries in the G22 rate code through 2019 through 2021. Again, one of the approaches that we want to take with this, and of course the laser won't point that far, so we'll just go with the second bullet point. In 2019, develop a collaborative approach to uncover root cause of serious injuries, improve hazard controls, and reduce the risk of injuries in healthcare facilities. So again, fairly high level. Quick show of hands though, because we talk about root cause, and in our profession, I've been talking about root cause for the better part of 25 years. Quick show of hands, how many people in the room today believe, as we sit here, your investigation and reporting format gets you to root cause? We got a ways to go then. Because our corrective actions, when we talk about identifying hazards, controlling risk, mitigating those hazards, it has got to be prefaced off of root cause. And if we're not getting there, then we truly do have work to do. Now, it's been interesting for us because the data put us in a certain place, and we've gone so far in working with employers in the last 6 to 9 months where we are taking the E1s and W1s that we have in our system and doing a desktop review to try to determine root cause. And the reason I ask the question is, unfortunately, more often than not, I can't really determine that collectively we're getting there. We see a lot of things, but unfortunately, there's still a lot of being rooted in worker should have been more careful. Worker tripped and fell on floor and needs to learn how to walk. I think I saw one correspondence course in walking is considered. You know, we got to get past some of that if we're going to kind of really get to the substance of this. So we've identified some healthcare facilities. We've worked with their leadership. We've distilled the data down a little bit more, looked at the E1s, W1s, and it's put us in a place where we're going to be very quickly here starting some partnership work with that healthcare facility to work our way through the particular area of interest that we have with them. We're very excited about it. It's a rather new undertaking for us, but we believe in kind of distilling that down and getting to where the injuries are being caused and what the task is that we're going to be able to collaboratively work with these folks to get us to a place where we have some solid, well-validated, well-considered recommendations. And the model for us will be to do that work. And I would refer to a lot of this work we're going to want to do as proof of concept. We have an idea here, and now we're going to work with some facilities to try to prove whether we're right or wrong in the approach we're trying to take. And the belief is that if we're able to generate the result we want in 2 or 3 facilities, then there's the opportunity to pollinate that out to other facilities within the same industries and offer them a line of sight of work that has been done that has generated some success for others in that same rate code. So through 2020 and 2021, again, there's that piece, replicate solutions validated with the targeted, and try to push that out into other facilities in that industry. We will be working obviously fairly close with those industries. And again, if the data suggests that we need to be in another place, then we will adjust our work to try to accommodate and bring that in over the course of time. When we talk about manufacturing, you look at manufacturing as an industry and we take that new definition of serious injuries, and what we find is that we kind of land almost, there's sort of a logic to it, I guess, that the prevalence of hand injuries in the manufacturing industry remain today to be a significant issue. Back injuries, manual material handling problems still exist there. So similarly, we want to improve and develop some hazard controls to reduce that. So in 2019, we're identifying 5 manufacturing facilities with the highest number of serious injuries related to that new definition of hand injury. So 50 days more comp paid, the LRWS flags, those kinds of things. We have been working fairly close. I've been saying this for a long time, that one of the objectives of our department is to partner and work consultatively and collaborate, honestly, with whoever it is we're working with. And I think we've expanded that out in the last year because we're also starting to include vendors, which we didn't do as much of. But we became aware of a program, it's through Causal, which is a very, very large global PPE glove manufacturer. And they actually have an audit tool that they use to come into an employer's place of business, assess their hazards, assess the PPE that's being provided, make recommendations for PPE that might fit better, be more appropriate. Essentially, we see quite often PPE is provided, but it's not being worn. Why isn't it being worn? It doesn't fit. I can't pick up washers off the workbench with it, so I ditch the work gloves, and all of a sudden I have no protection from lacerations, cuts, things of that nature, which begin to generate some of the incidents that we're seeing. So we're working very closely with that manufacturer to co-brand that audit protocol and process program that they have, and begin to work with the manufacturing industry and a few willing firms to essentially pilot this program, figure out what works, what doesn't, revise and adjust what we do and how we do it, and again, begin to start pushing that out to other employers in those industries. So our plan is to work with a select number of employers in the next year to essentially, again, proof of concept that project. Based on those learnings, evaluation of the effectiveness of the program, any adjustments, and start pushing that out to other employers in 2020 and 2021. The other major piece that we do continue to see is a suggestion, if not proven, if certainly substantiated in kind of a logic model sort of framework, that machine guarding in the manufacturing industry remains a bit of an issue that needs resolution. We're still seeing way too many hand injuries and fingertips getting lost and so on because of guards either completely ineffective, completely missing, modified in some way, shape, or form as to no longer be effective. We want to begin to look at this a little more. One of the things that we're aware of here is anybody aware of a machine guarding standard in Saskatchewan today? Exactly. And the belief would be that we're at a point in the evolution of this where we really do need to take a look at this issue and possibly consider adopting the CSA standard on machine guarding, work with an industry best practices group to craft something of our own if we don't feel we're ready. But we really do need to begin to be more aggressive about creating standards for some of what we're involved in health and safety, and to make sure that training and education related to that is consistent. I saw an example recently where a 37-minute video constituted fall protection training for workers at a facility here in the province. 37 minutes worth of YouTube video to protect you from falling off a building when one of the major areas of catastrophic failure and fatality we had in this province in the last 2 years has been falls from working at heights. But there is no standard. So we need to begin to look at those, to adopt those, to raise the bar and the expectations as to what constitutes education versus training, to what standard, who's delivering it, how it's being delivered. There is some really good training work being done out there, but I think we need to raise the bar a little bit on that. This one on machine guarding will probably be our first endeavor into those kinds of things, but it will probably not be our last. This one, I have to admit, when it hit the radar screen, kind of surprised me, but not when you consider that for the first time in the province, we threw psychological health and safety as an injury trigger on our serious injuries and fatality definition. It almost makes sense. The closer we look at this one, the more we realize we have to do better as a province by way of our first responders and people in those higher risk rate codes when it comes to PTSD, psychological health and safety, mental health, violence, harassment, really the whole bucket. So again, we want to improve that. In 2018, we've started working, we've reached out to the Provincial First Responders Group. We're looking at developing a freestanding industry-specific advisory group to give us insight into what is going on in the industry, what tools do they have that are working, what tools and gaps are they seeing that we really need to begin to backfill, what types of resources, how are we going to make that available. And the response from that group has been fabulous, as you would expect, because it's such an issue for them. So we plan to continue and participate in research to promote, because again, the whole notion of mental health and psychological health and safety, we're all still very much learning, and we'll continue to learn, and that'll evolve, so we'll have to be willing to adjust there. But we're going to create that committee with them, share research. It isn't even necessarily so that we're super concerned about generating our own research. We know there's good research going on in BC and Ontario and all kinds of different places. Our hope is that we'll be able to partner with those groups and agencies to get that research, to share that information, so that ideally we can get moving on this a little bit quicker, a little more effectiveness. So, because again, when we talk about these things in timelines of 2 and 3 years, people are still being hurt along that path. And we know that. So there's always that sense of urgency to want to make this happen fairly quickly. But it's also just as important to think about it long enough to try and get it closer to right. So we will spend that time and energy. Again, we need to develop partnerships. You'll hear that quite a bit. The Compensation Board, WorkSafe, a funded safety association in and of itself, will not be able to do some of this. It'll be like trying to boil the ocean. But collectively, if we can harness our capacity and focus it and come to some understanding and partnership around some of this, the belief is that we will be able to move some of this forward far quicker. I've heard it many times in the last year or so. You probably would have heard it a few times in a couple of sessions this morning. The idea of a real need to develop a provincial anti-stigma campaign around the notion of mental health and psychological health and safety in this province. The stats that Jennifer put, it was good to know that those numbers, as scary as they were, are actually the improved numbers. We got a little ways to go yet on the overall understanding and stigma associated with some of this. But again, we think with our industry partners, our stakeholders, other interested groups, there is opportunity to, again, move into that and create that awareness, enhance that understanding, that collective understanding far quicker. Like most, we want to be able to develop a toolkit of best practices and resources for that first responders group. And we're very excited about the opportunities that would seem to be there in the conversations we've had with them to date. It continues. Continue to try to provide some evaluation approach for the programs and resources, what programs are working, what resources are good, what needs to be changed. I know there's never been a bad resource generated by anybody ever. 37-minute fall rest video, but anyway. Because of the nature of that group, we're looking at hosting a first responder mental health group in partnership with them. Reach out to the broader public safety personnel. There are safety people in there. There's just a lot of learning and understanding that we think we can help with in the next couple of years to prop up this really high-risk area when it comes to the mental health and psychological health and safety component. And develop and continue to develop and get better at creating capacity. More people have to understand this. More people have to be able to speak to this well and easily in their environments. Again, I know in working on this one for the last couple of years, I'm getting better at it. I still trip over myself when it comes to wanting to get into a two-way discussion about mental health and psychological health and safety. It remains to this day a bit of a challenge on a personal level. I don't think that would be any different for any of us in our day-to-day work environment, quite honestly. The transportation industry has been on WorkSafe's radar for quite some time, but it presents some fairly unique challenges because so many of the trucking firms, of course, are federally regulated. So we don't have a particularly good line of sight in there. But we've been working with the federal OH&S people for a little while now. We're getting to the point where we are very close now to having a signed data sharing agreement with those folks so that we can begin to show them the data, what firms, what industries, what type of activities are generating the issues that are happening in there. We've been working fairly closely with the Saskatchewan Trucking Association. Now again, most of you will be aware that about a year ago now we had a very serious fatality incident in this province that has really accelerated rapidly the view. And of course, we hear a lot out there about the mandatory training that's going to be. It's interesting, no one mentioned that most of that mandatory training was about the driver operating the rig, not improving the safety for the driver of the rig. We still have way too many truck drivers still jumping off the decks of trailers in the dead of a Saskatchewan winter and blowing out knees, ankles. I can't even begin to guess the number of truckers who managed to blow out a back in the course of a 10, 15-year career driving a truck, tarping loads on tarping loads, all of what goes with that. We really do need to make an investment of time and energy in taking a look at the tasks that the transportation industry people are doing that's creating the injuries for them. So we're very much looking forward to working with those industries. The Trucking Association has been an awesome partner to this point. We're really excited about the opportunities to kind of move this forward with them. And if by now you haven't noticed, I'm hoping that there's a theme you're seeing. And this isn't WorkSafe telling industry what industry needs to do. This is WorkSafe saying that we're very interested in facilitating a discussion with whoever needs to be there with industry to make it better. I don't know all of what's going on in the trucking industry, but I like to think we will take the time to help industry figure it out. And we can help and are more than interested in helping to facilitate. If it's an issue of bringing in subject matter expertise that we do not have currently, we will work to find that subject matter expertise and bring them in. But collectively, again, WorkSafe will not be able to boil this ocean on its own. We are going to need to be working very closely, constructively, and effectively with all of our stakeholders, employer groups, funded safety associations, enforcement people, to push this. And I think you heard it in the keynote this morning. We've got a ceiling. Our results, as you saw, have been running in the right direction for more than a decade. For safety people, it's never fast enough. I'd be the first one to tell you that. But the trend lines have been going in the right direction. This is the first year in my 11-year relationship with the board where the numbers are going in the wrong way. So we got two ways to look at this. They've either plateaued or they're getting worse. Neither are acceptable. So WorkSafe, and hoping everybody else comes along for the ride, is trying to reevaluate what we do, how we do it, to try to get better results out of our collective input. So we're going to see where this one takes us. The other one, and I got to admit, how many people in the room actually work within an industry that has a core program? The trucking industry has expressed some interest in developing a core for the construction industry. So we're quite excited about that. Again, it is not an area of expertise per se that we have, but we certainly know some folks at funded safety associations that might know a thing or two about developing a core and getting that set up. So we're kind of excited about that because, again, statistically, there is some indication out there that industries that have funded safety associations and cores and those higher performing pieces do, over the course of time, perform better. So we see that, and then the industry is asking for it. So we're certainly supportive of that. And try to get, again, a smaller group of willing people from that industry to develop their safety management system, get that core, learn from it, revise it, and again, begin to push that out to other folks in the industry. In every strategy you work on, you get to that last page and there's other, which is infinitely better, I guess, than miscellaneous. I'm not sure. But we have an other. And I mentioned it earlier. We talked about the new definition, and there were some things that we wanted to try and do with that yet. Oh, no, sorry. First piece, we'll start at the top. I was going to cut to the bottom. Other, develop serious injuries and fatalities working group. We don't know what we don't know. We have a certain amount of data, we look at it, we analyze it, it puts us in an industry, it puts us with an employer. But at that point, we really don't know what we do have, or what we are looking at and what we aren't looking at. So we're looking at E1s, we're looking at W1s, we're challenging root cause, we're trying to work in that, in improving that. Similar with the serious injuries and fatalities. We are going to need to establish a larger provincial steering committee to regularly sit down and talk about serious injuries and fatalities in the province. We need the input from industry as to what's going on, the direction the industry is going. What are they seeing? Is what we're seeing aligning with that? Where is there common ground and opportunity for us to work together on something that collectively we believe will make a difference? So we're kicking around the idea of striking that committee. Our belief is that will happen sometime yet this year. There are certainly many stakeholders and different groups that we would like to talk to about this, and we're really looking forward to getting going with that, because in the absence of it, we're just figuring it out for ourselves, and it's slower, and we don't necessarily and won't necessarily always land on the right spot, and we really do need to leverage our capacity for the result we're trying to get. Last piece is that serious injury definition. By 2020, we would like to add hospitalization to that definition that Beth shared with us. We found out, just because of course the healthcare environment has changed. I was absolutely floored just recently at a WorkSafe meeting. We were talking about an incident that had resulted in the amputation of 2 fingers and a fingertip for a third one. Now again, you'd be required to report that under Section 9 if the worker spent 72 hours or more in a healthcare facility. But apparently no one spends any time in a healthcare facility anymore, because the person who had this incident happen to them was out in less than 10. So that incident happened, but it was never tracked, reported, because it didn't hit the threshold that's in the C. So we need to adjust that. We need to begin to get into a discussion about any incident that requires hospitalization, period. Because I know, and I don't profess to know all the details, but my wife spent, I think, 3 days in the hospital after our first one. My sister-in-law just spent a day. So again, that's changed. So the world and the environment in which we're working is changing, and I think WorkSafe and employers as a whole need to adjust to that as well. So we would like to add that hospitalization piece into that definition. I think it would be a very interesting lens to throw over top of the traditional data and see what the world looked like there. Because a lot of these are happening and they're not being reported. 2021, this is of particular interest to me. It was alluded to in the keynote this morning, so I was quite excited about that. There is some of us, and again, I've been at this a while now, so let's just say I was kind of born and raised on Heinrich and the iceberg diagram and so on. Again, our profession has evolved. I'm not sure Heinrich holds water quite the way it did in 1985 or so when I started in this. There are new models out there, better models. The SIF model, as an example, is starting to be picked up by some larger employers and industries out there. It is a model that I think we would really like to do more with in the province. So we're looking at working fairly closely here to try to create some education and awareness and some presentation and bring in some subject matter experts on the SIF model, because our profession has certainly evolved, but it's amazing to me how frequent, even now today, lost times not tolerable, non-lost times kind of sort of tolerable most of the time. And it is in the prevention of those near misses and those ones there you could have lost your hand where I think there's real ground to be made, but a lot of us are really not looking at that. Let's put it this way, my guess would be if we're not confident that we're getting to root cause, I would be really surprised that we're using models for predictive prevention like SIF would be. So again, we want to begin to get that conversation going. So we plan on doing something with that probably in 2020 is the timeline. We've got some lines of thought, but we haven't nailed that down. So that's where we landed. We spent a year looking at the data put us in industries, the data put us to tasks, the data gave us a line of sight to causal factor, and we've started reaching out to the various industry stakeholders and partners to begin to move this forward. Understanding from day one that this is a living strategy and will need to be revised and adjusted based on the indicators that we'll be tracking. I would like to thank you all very much for your time and attention on the work that our prevention department of 20 people does to try to move the bar in health and safety forward for all of us. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.